What does it take to master front of house talent for some of the most renowned live performance venues across the nation? Today, we have the privilege of delving into this fascinating world with an exceptional guest. I'm thrilled to introduce Frederick Vogler, a multi Grammy Award winning sound designer and front of house mixer, known for his outstanding work at iconic venues like the Hollywood Bowl and Walt Disney Concert Hall. Through his consulting company, Sonatus, Fred has left his mark not only on the LA Phil, LA Opera, and the Mormon Tabernacle Choir, but has also lent his expertise to events spanning from Menlo Park to Santiago, Chile, and even Florida. Earlier in his career, Mr. Vogler made significant contributions to the film industry, serving as an on-set music playback live record engineer for beloved films like Sister Act 1 and 2 and The Preacher's Wife. Without further ado, let's extend a warm welcome to Fred Vogler.
Hello.
Hello, Fred.
Hey.
Thanks for joining us. Can you walk us through your journey into the world of live sound design and front of house mixing? I mean, what initially drew you into this field and how did you get it started?
I think that, like a lot of people in the industry, we start as musicians at some point, and through the passion of playing music or being active or involved in music and music making, you find a path. And, it was early on, like 12 years old range, that I was introduced to professional audio equipment and professional recording and stuff, and was so kind of enthralled with the concept of capture and record and multi-track that I was focused on getting and having those components for myself. And so I played in bands in my teens, and got into college and realized that my performing skills as a keyboardist and stuff weren't on par with the skills of lots of other musicians in the programs around me. And I had a real penchant or interest in all of the technology, the microphones and capturing sound. And so through some luck and some real concentrated focus and interest, I was able to kind of parlay that into doing more engineering and more some studio, but mainly location work. So I would go to a concert hall, I'd go to a church, I would go to a variety of different acoustics and record whatever ensemble, whatever music was being made. And, through that, I was able to, learn a lot about mic technique and different performers and working with the personalities. And, I anybody who's been in the business knows it's all about kind of your energy and how you contribute to the cause. If you're someone stressed or adding more anxiety in general, it's hard to have you around in a live setting. If you can kind of roll with it and you're comforting and offer, sort of a stable environment, it seems to work much better. And that's what kind of happened. I was a student at USC in the School of Music, and I was recording, I don't know, 3, maybe 4 recitals or concerts or something a week, it seemed. And, got to know and see and hear a lot of different types of music, lots of different ensembles. And then, you get lucky sometimes, and something opens up and you can jump on that. And, the location film work was some of that. That was an interesting process to be part of and to see entertainment, industry at that level, because there's just so much power with all these people working together to create something extraordinary. And then, at the same time doing record work and doing orchestral based, I guess, support allowed me to kind of get into, I got offered to work on the Streisand orchestra mixes for her big come out of the, she hadn't performed in 25 years or something. And
Right.
they needed someone who could work with the orchestra and create submixes for the front of house and for monitors and stuff. And that was a big eye opener too, because that scale, again, working with people that were way more experienced in live sound. But kind of as my main introduction into it was pretty exciting. And, it's you're going to make some mistakes, but hopefully you don't make big mistakes, and you're going to learn along the way. And I've had the fortune of some good mentors and people that, were good for me to ask questions or get guidance from. And then the Hollywood Bowl came to be in the early 2000s, 2003. And I was wary at the time of what that meant and how that would define me. Oh my God, I'm gonna
Oh,
be a
yeah.
live sound person. And in the '90s, live sound was sort of that secondary career. It was the recording studio, it was making those type of records. But as that industry changed with digital distribution and ability to share files and not have to buy physical discs and stuff, that industry kind of to shrink a little bit, and live sound and the world of that live entertainment has grown. And so I've seen in the last 20 years being at the Bowl, this just dramatic change. You go to the trade shows, you go to the various conventions and stuff, and you see live sound now is kind of the legit, more very um, appreciated and represented industry. So like I said, it's somewhat luck and timing and all that. So it's kind of brought me to that place, and I've been fortunate with the affiliation, especially with the Hollywood Bowl. We do so many different types of programs, and high level by and large. So it's been a really good opportunity.
Yeah, that's an amazing history. You've obviously worked in lots of different venues and spaces, and for different types of performances. What are the most important things you think for doing sound design for different types of venues? Is there kind of one unique thread that you use, or do you have some different approaches based on the type of performance and the type of venue?
Well, that's a good question. I mean, sound design, works in theater differently than it does in motion picture and then live sound. And there's there's a common thread with all of the folks that do sound design and trying to recreate or trying to, um, I guess, enhance the experience for the audience. In live sound, you're often having to be conscious of time because you only have so much rehearsal, so much setup, and then they do a show. And once the show starts, the train's left the station. You're moving.
Game on.
You can't stop and retool and rethink this. So you have to be very quick on your feet, and you have to be prepared as best possible, knowing microphones, because the tools of sound design are obviously microphones, speakers, and then you have to be familiar with room acoustics. You have to know sound wave propagation, understand what absorbs, what reflects and diffuses sound, and how those can maybe help in the process. And then you have to be open-minded. Again, you don't want to be that stress person that's causing more stress and aggravation for the event. You have to be able to kind of adapt and move with the production, because inevitably you can set up a lot of things in advance and expect it all to come together, but there's, oh, by the way, so there's unexpected things that are going to change. And then a really good group of people around you, and that's the other thing. I've been fortunate to have um incredible support, from crew, high level crew people to sound design and manufacturers with strong sound engineers and stuff. So I'd like to say, oh, it's just my great work, but in fact, it's the accomplishment of many that make these things successful. And I get to sit on the console or sit in the house and drive it, or be somewhat in charge, but it's really a whole team of people that makes these things possible.
Absolutely. You've mentioned microphones a number of times. Are there some specific microphone techniques that you've developed, or um, I don't know. We can get into some specific brands, but what do you take in your toolkit as a collection of microphones, or is it just unique to each show?
Well, I think that you do learn a certain type of transducer and microphone that works better for certain instances or instruments. And again, I think doing all those recitals when I was in my college days and early 20s, that I was able to try different mics and try different locations on a variety of instruments, whether it was piano or voice or trio or larger ensembles. And you learn, kind of the fundamentals of miking, because there's it's kind of a physics, thing. There's a spacing between the mics. There's a distance from the source. There's a height of the mics, and then there's an angle of the mic. And those four parameters, width, distance, height, angle, will change everything. Your ability to capture sound and then make it louder is what we do in the world of amplification, right? Live sound is make it louder. Um, is really dependent on how you position those mics and your familiarity with them. I use a wide range of mics, and again, depending on what the source on stage is doing, if it's just orchestral, and there's no amplification, in the sense there's no keyboard or bass or something that needs amplification, then I might get the Sheps out, might get the Sennheisers out, and focus a little bit more on areas. But if there's a band and an orchestra or orchestral elements, then you have to go tight, and you have to get something that's like the DPA 4099 on the strings, which is an individual string mic. There's going to be bleed. We call it friendly fire, from other elements, but hopefully there'll be more of that instrument than there are the others. And so proximity and how you can get that in there. And you also have to be constantly conscious of sight lines. Inevitably there's IMAG, or there's some sort of a camera or something, or the player has to see the conductor or has to see other band or orchestra members. So you can't just put anything up that you want. You're going to have to negotiate. And so, but mic technique is imperative. I think understanding microphones and having a collection to kind of choose from is really important.
I think that's great advice. It might always be my experience that you can't really fix what is broken on the input. If it's really bad on the input, you can only make it a little bit better. So getting it right at the beginning is absolutely critical.
Absolutely.
Very, very, very good advice. I've had some experience dealing with some performing talent on microphones with some of my past working for Electro Voice and for Crown. So, some top talent there. Do you find that some performers have specific requirements that they really insist on, and is that an important part of your toolkit as well?
Definitely. I mean, you have to have a good dialogue and a good relationship with the performers. Um, I'm lucky to have been raised by a psychologist. So listening and understanding human behavior and kind of working with, the different personalities is a benefit. And knowing and talking to artists and kind of getting a sense of what's realistic is part of the absolute I guess challenge, but also success of it. If you can get in and have that rapport and kind of a dialogue with the artist and get them to work with you and the technology, boy, things go much better. I mean, recently I did a show with Seth MacFarlane and got him to sing into a 1937 vintage RCA 44. And I'd been asking Seth, we'd done some other shows in the past, orchestra band and kind of Sinatra based songs. And he agreed to it, but I said, there's a familiarity or comfort you have to have with that technology. You don't stand back. You have to work the mic, and you have to, become very comfortable, maybe touching or holding or bringing it in, because that will really ignite the quality of sound. And boy, he did it, and it was fantastic. So you have to be able to, have a chance to find artists that are willing to talk, but some of them want head lavs, some of them want, a certain handheld, and you can't completely dictate it. You have to, open it up and maybe suggest. And if something doesn't work, then you go, well, I have this other one. You could try this, because sometimes artists are director, producer types want, oh, I don't want to see the mic. I don't want to see anything. And you go, okay, well, we can try that. And when it doesn't work, you better have a plan B or the next thing ready. And that happens regularly as well. If somebody's got a vision of what it should look like and not necessarily understand that you have to have the mic in a certain position or it just doesn't work. For monitors, doesn't work for PA, doesn't work for the quality of sound.
Sure.
So,
What are some of the other challenges that you've experienced in venues that have been tough to overcome? And I love your approach of just be chill and mellow and work with the people there. Don't add to the stress. What are some of the toughest things that you've experienced, and how have you been able to overcome them?
well, toughest is always time. I mean, as I'd mentioned earlier, because everyone's stressed and everyone has priorities, and there's a lot of other um, issues that are happening, whether it's lighting, and they got everything all over the stage, and you're trying to get things set up, but they have to get the lights in place so they can raise, the trusses, the lighting trusses up into position. There's constant set design and stuff that you have to work around, and cameras and stuff like that everybody wants. It's all kind of a bit of a game for who's going to get their stuff in there and positioned in the best way. And there's electrical issues. You can't have your mic lines and electrical lines laying on top of each other. You get hums and buzzes. Um, but I think that the biggest challenges are the personalities around you, and again, you'll find some venues have stronger personalities than others, and that goes for any of the departments, whether um, because if you do location work, you have to go to that place, and somebody has been there maybe for a long time, and they don't need somebody coming in telling them how to do everything. And so you have to kind of curb your desire to enforce your opinion or your sound or your approach on everybody. You have to see what they're doing and make you kind of make it work for you. I find a lot of times people are so eager to, hey, we have to have it this way, and I'm going to tune your system. And I've been host to a lot of sound persons who come through and they want to, they're going to mix a show or they're going to be um, doing something involved with sound at the venue that I'm at and I'm kind of overseeing. And the ones that come in with the attitude that, hey, tell me how you do this, or how does that work, or what do you recommend? Boy, the day is going to go a lot better if they come in with a real strong attitude and kind of like going to force their way and tell you what you've been doing wrong all this time. It doesn't usually happen well. And most of the time, the persons that have been at venues have reasons for why they're doing what they're doing. And you just have to be open-minded again, and you have to sit there and listen to what they've done. It doesn't mean that you have to do it the same way. It just means that you give them a chance to talk and explain, and then you adapt the way you want to do it to what they have. And sometimes they offer things that you hadn't thought of that are way better, and it works out successful. That 44 mic that I wanted to put on, the crew chief at the Kennedy Center said, "Hey, why don't we put this wireless mic plug on it so he doesn't have to also deal with the cable management?" I was like, didn't think about that, because the mic gets heavy, the mic stand is heavy to keep the mic
Right.
from falling over, and not having to do cable management, paging, and all that stuff was a game changer. And I was like, yeah, that was a really good idea, and it worked. It worked well, so Seth could move the mic into position for the slower songs that he was singing, and then move it out of the position and go back to the handheld. And you know, again, if you come in with a big attitude, they're not necessarily going to suggest anything to help you. And you should definitely know that the persons that are in those venues can be a big aid. They can also be a big,
Pain
problem.
if you
So
turn them off.
that's a challenge, and you got to learn to work with the persons and the personnel around you.
That's great advice. What impact would you say technology has had in both helping with live sound production and recording, as well as maybe not helping so much?
Well, live sound has matured and gone through some pretty significant changes in the last 15 years. And digital technology has been wonderful. The ability to save and recall and um, set up quickly and go to onboard record facility or EQ or compression and all that stuff has really transformed the way you operate in a live setting. We have shows with 160 mics. We get one rehearsal and we're on air that night. So set up, rehearse, a little bit of a break, and then we do a concert. And then the next day is something completely different. So the network, the concept of having everything on a network and being able to access all of those sounds and then send things around, game changer. But the folly and the challenge is to not lose focus of the quality or the sound itself. People get pretty ambitious with plugins or with all the different toys you can throw on it. But why? Because they're there, and I guess, man, let's just try them. And in the last year, I inherited a 1974 Claire audio board that was used for Springsteen and whatnot concerts because a mixer that I came to know, Bruce Jackson, had passed away some years ago, and his widow asked if I'd like the board. And at first I was like, oh, what am I going to do with a 32 input analog console that was used for live sound? Well, as it turns out, the quality of the board's pretty high, and the componentry, we did some caps, changed capacitors and stuff to get those all on par because it's a board that's
It's
40
so
years
old. Yeah.
Yeah. 50 years old, I guess. But the sound of it's really good. And the remarkable thing is that it focuses my attention to the sound more than looking at all the incredible colors and graphic representation of EQ or whatever compression you're doing. So you can't in digital, you turn that knob and you see that waveform up and down, and you go, I'm at 3.1K and I'm pushing it 4.2 decibels and it's got a cue of blah blah blah. And am I hearing that? I don't know. I guess I'm hearing. I kind of sweep it a little bit, but in the analog world, a little goes a long way, and you hear stuff in a way. And again, I think part of it's just because you're focusing differently. Your eyes aren't telling you anything. It's all ears. You look at the knob, and you don't have you don't have anything to really reference and get yourself distracted. And so with the digital stuff, it's fun because it has so much power, and it's so comprehensive, but you can't lose focus of the fundamentals. It's got to still sound good, or you don't want to over compress, over I guess saturate with EQ or plugins and stuff. You got to focus on clean, open, full, rich sound. And I'm also someone who embraces a lot of stereo. I know there's a lot of mono, or people want to keep it the same from one side of the venue to the next, and I'm not of that ilk. I'm much more into the spatial or the object based. So as far as I can push items and objects and create a big sound, and if I can open up the spatialization or the experience for more people, I will, even if it means when you're on one side of the venue, it's a little different than on the other side. It's not that different if you're in an acoustic with an acoustic ensemble. If you're sitting, because at the Walt Disney Concert Hall, it's a orchestra in the round. So if you're sitting on the side, you hear a different blend of orchestral elements than you do if you're sitting in the middle or if you're sitting behind them. And
Sure.
and so in the world of sound design or sound amplification reinforcement, yeah, I think it's okay. I think there's some wiggle room on how you make it sound for all of the patrons, and there's a big advantage if you can spread the sound a bit and create that dimension. So
That's fantastic. I had this old axiom that I think you somewhat validated here, is that use technology to solve problems, and then use your ears and your experience to create the performance, or to create the art, if you will. And I don't know, does that sound like that fits with your kind of your paradigm there?
yeah, spot on. I think that people, or a surprising number of people, don't realize the position of the sound mixer, sound designer, in some ways. I mean, maybe this group does because it's a focus on these technologies, but it is technology at the end of the day. It's not it's not the solution, it's the tool. And you still have to have technique, and you still have to focus on that technique. And as I say to um, colleagues and people that ask, that you can buy a $200,000 Steinway piano and put it on that stage, but it doesn't mean you're going to sound like a fantastic player. I mean, if you're an amateur or a beginner, you're still going to sound like an amateur or beginner, no matter what that instrument is. If that's a $100,000 Steinway, you still sound like you sound. And um, I would take someone with great technique over someone with a great instrument, with no technique. So and if you have someone with great technique on a great instrument, wow, then the sky's the limit. That's
Magic really happens.
so that's one of those things that, yeah, don't forget, you have to still listen, and you still have to pay critical attention to the signal flow, the gain structure, the way you have it laid out, and don't overthink it and overdo it just because you can. Make sure it all makes sense, and you're not adding stuff to it that's going to be corrupting the sound.
Sure. How has I got another question for you? One of the biggest problems on stage has always been the SPL that's on stage with the talent, and with modern line array systems and other techniques, and now with the next generation of wireless microphones, multiple DSP elements, and wireless inner monitoring. What have you seen change in that regard, and how has that helped or hurt the performance?
Well, I think it helps a lot when you have complicated ensembles. You have band or rhythm elements, drums, bass, guitar, keyboard, amplification, and orchestral or acoustic stuff. Those are game changers. Those are big difference. If somebody has to have floor wedges blasting, the keyboard or the vocal or something, every mic on that stage is going to pick it up. Like I was talking about friendly fire earlier. If
Right.
if I have 130 mics in the orchestra open, and I'm bringing them up and down. I read music. I can follow the charts and kind of keep them so that I'm not blasting or pushing the brass mics when they're not playing for this song or this section. But nonetheless, the more controlled the sound is on stage, and with these technologies where people can do in-ear, or they have mics that are on them that are really focused on, it really helps. um Inevitably, you're going to get the performer who holds the mic 2 feet from their mouth, or doesn't have
Yep.
any real concern for all the other elements going on. But, granted, there's a lot of other pressure. You got a camera, you got lights, you got an audience is expecting you to be, perform. So holding that mic up and really singing into it because that's what's best for the monitor mixer or the front of house mixer or the recording isn't necessarily always the priority. And so I'd like to think that uh, everybody was on board with that. But when you can put mics on them or keep them in there on the performers in a way that uh, they're comfortable, life is a lot better. The more comfortable the performer, the better the performance.
That's cool. You mentioned earlier your experience doing the Barbara Streisand Orchestra when she came back out after not performing for so many years. I remember watching that and just being in awe. I've always been Barbara Streisand's always been one of my favorites. So do you feel like you were kind of mentored in that experience by more senior people with more experience? Did they kind of help you out in that regard? You mentioned that you were kind of a newbie there and they wanted to see what your chops were like, right?
Absolutely. I mean, I was definitely uh, being taught some lessons along the way. And, again, everybody, you have to accept the fact that you don't know it all, and you're not going to know it all. You know certain things, and at certain levels of experience, you're going to um, be able to do this much. And it just takes years. I mean, I like to think that I in the sense, get better every year. And I think I do. I make an effort, conscious effort to know more, or try to learn things every day, or certainly every event kind of adds something to it. So yeah, I was definitely given some schooling in that arena, and I was fortunate at that level. You know, I was with that level of people.
Yeah, I would say so. I've had that chance of associating with lots of the live sound world in some of my previous roles. So I taught at the live sound workshop at Chapman College there for a while. And I've gotten to know a lot of the at the time, I mean, we're talking 20 years ago, some of the top touring sound companies that there are. And it seems like if you can kind of prove your worth, then you can be mentored along. They're actually kind of anxious to help you to be successful. Nobody wants to see bad audio happen. And I was going to ask you if that's something that you kind of look forward to the opportunity of doing is as you see talent as you go into different venues, helping them to kind of come along. Is that something that you enjoy doing, or is that just kind of happens along the way?
Very much so. I mean, I think it's important to help the next generation, audio folks kind of take from what you've learned and add to it. I'm extremely interested in people that are motivated and really focused and have a background that supports it. You know, when somebody says, "Oh, it looks like what you do is so much fun. How do I do this?" Well, there's fun elements, but there's a lot of work and took a lot of discipline and a lot of, you know, telling my family or friends or something, "Hey, I can't do that this weekend. I know it's, so and so's anniversary or so and so's birthday, but I've got this gig or I've got something I'm into and I've got to see this through." So, when I hear people talk about work-life balance, I sit there and go, "Well, I'll tell you, I mean, I work a lot, and my wife is in the entertainment business too, and she works a lot, and so she understands that there's that world of work, and then life is what you make of it around that time.
Mhm.
And so young people that come and show that kind of real focus, and that I tell people, hey, show up on time, show up with a good attitude, and sober, ready to kick it. You're going to learn things, and as long as you keep that brain of yours ticking, that you don't have to come in knowing it all. You have to come in having familiarity and understanding, but you have to be able to absorb and then advance it. And those that want to learn, I have no problem at all helping to instruct or helping to guide. I mean, I was able to receive that from several colleagues, and they made a difference in my life, and I have no problem pushing or helping with that with the right group going forward.
That's really cool. My feeling is that I have a greater degree of trust for someone who asks questions and is eager to learn and understand, and certainly is not afraid to talk about things that they know, but is never afraid to ask a question. Is this the right point to connect? Is this the right mic to use for this position? You have a lot more confidence in giving them job and giving them insight as to what to
Well,
do.
and I also think that learning what has been successful, in the past, whether it's the mic technique, um, instead of trying to kind of, you know, go down a new path, like, oh, I'm going to mic it this way or I'm going to do it this way. Well, I don't have a problem with trying new stuff, but why don't you master what's been really working for many years, and then expand on that,
Sure.
because likely you're not going to come up with um, ideas or things that haven't been thought of or tried before. And I'm not saying there aren't some new ground to cover or there's not new stuff to figure out. I'm just saying that master what has been successful, and then build on that. That would be a good move.
Yeah. Great advice. Well, that's a perfect segue into kind of our last question here is what do you see in the future in terms of the next big development to help us with audio performances, with live sound production? What would you like to see? Kind of give us a little bit of an insight as to where you see the industry going and what you would like to see the industry do going forward.
Well, it's a tough question because technology has such an impact on things, and just as you see one protocol is popular now and it kind of fizzles or goes away down the road. Um, I know that network technologies are here to stay, and being able to put several consoles, several IO boxes, or several persons all together connected with these technologies is a future, and understanding matrix mixing and kind of dimensional matrix mixing is imperative. I've had um, some work with Fox Sports, and I've seen a lot of sporting world stuff in the last few years, um, and just blown away with the technologies that the sports world brings to entertainment. And it is entertainment, it's sport, but it's still entertainment. And
Sure.
I'd like to see those technologies more in the world of live shows, live performance. I don't think I'm alone in that desire, but what you can do with video and audio and you know these massive systems where fiber and data are throwing stuff around, and you could have events that are simultaneous but still connected together from different spaces, different um, venues to different lands is amazing. Um, and again, just because you can doesn't mean you want to do it. You just have to find that right balance of what technology you can bring to the live show and that's dependable, reliable, and you have time to manage. But if you can bring in that sports world, that theme park world, and kind of supersize or enhance the live show, um, that's wonderful. I mean, and it's happening. I mean, there are artists that are doing it. What I'd like to see more from artists is live performance and not track based
Mm.
performance. I really I really enjoy musicians playing and keen or focusing on each other. And when you play to a track, it's there's that sense of a little bit of it's a little controlled, it's a little stilted at times. And I get it's repeatable and it's hard to do successive or back-to-back shows that are large scale without some kind of thing that anchors everything. But man, there are musicians out there that can play and can play really well, and giving them a click track is one thing. Making it a full band that they're playing on top of is another. And I'm it's just night and day difference when somebody is playing without track versus with track, these tunes. And I as a somebody who's interested in music and musical performance, you come away sometimes and you go, oh, that was an okay performance. And sometimes you come away and you go, wow, something just magical happened. And that's what happens in live performance. But when a
Yeah.
track's playing, it's kind of down the, it's keeps it at a certain level the whole time. So you don't have that chance of it going extraordinary. Track
Yeah.
track restricts that. And I understand the need and the desire and the security of it, but I would love to see more abandonment of the track performance, and just let's just kick it, and it's okay. You make a mistake or it doesn't glue as much as it might, because when it does connect and everything's perfect or it's just extraordinary, that's the reason why we go see live shows, and that's what
Right.
turns me on. And I'll take the chance when something goes that's not expected, or something just comes together unexpectedly that way. um it's so exciting. You remember those events and you
Yep.
go, wow, that I'm going to go see more of this.
Yeah, I refer to them as the people where the performers and the audience get into a flow state together,
Yeah,
and as a result, there's this really cool thing that happens in everybody's brains. Talking about a psychological background that brings them all together, and you can't get that if you're reading from a script, if you're just following along, if something else that is in your ear, it has to be almost like in your soul. And as a result, you can anticipate and there's just a real cool thing that happens there.
That synergy
great
is
insight.
why we live, and that's human stuff that is just fun and totally what I want to see more of or be part of.
Well, that explains why you're so good is you enjoy the artistry, the beauty, the majesty of doing live sound production. That's really cool. This has been fantastic. Appreciate your time with us. Fantastic.
My pleasure, and look forward to more.
Thanks for watching Broadcast to Post. Please make sure to subscribe to the podcast to receive future episodes. Follow Keycode Media on LinkedIn, Twitter, Facebook, or Instagram to receive news on additional AV, broadcast, and post-production technology content. See you next time, folks.